Well, each week a group of insiders joins me to offer perspective on some of the week's top stories. This week, our special panel of tourism experts look at the big business of tourism in Indiana and how it relates to economic development, workforce development, quality of place, and a number of issues. Plus, the duties of the Indiana Office of Tourism Development and administrative structure could be changed a bit, perhaps, to the Indiana Destination Development Corporation. Our insiders this week are Visit Indy's Vice President of Destination Development, Matt Carter. Also, the Executive Director of the Indiana Tourism Association, Carrie Lambert, and the CEO of Hamilton County Tourism, Brenda Myers. And welcome one and all to this special edition of the Insiders. And I think to kind of maybe tee things up with each of you, I'm interested in, Brenda, we'll start with you, on your take on the state of tourism in Indiana in 2019.
I think it's never been better. I think we are in an exciting period in tourism in which place and workforce and marketing and communications and tourism are all merging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I think that where we are today is we're seeing unprecedented cooperation between regions and the opportunity to understand that the tourism product is a collective, it's a tapestry, it's a knit quilt of the state of Indiana of opportunities that are uniquely owned in each of the districts, but collectively one product.
A lot of creative things going on around the state. Carrie, what are you seeing from a more global, kind of a statewide standpoint?
Yeah, I think I would echo everything that they said. We have so many great opportunities in different parts of the state, and we're starting to see how we can marry those together and partner together to create a better product for our end visitor and even the end residents in Indiana to come and experience a broader scope of that. Do
you sense that communities, regions are beginning to play better together, I guess, if you will? I know in the economic development world, over time, that's been a challenge, getting that regional concept. Some areas do it better than others. Do you sense it's getting better?
I do. I think that we're recognizing that at the end of the day, a visitor doesn't stop at that county line and turn around, right? They want to just have a whole experience, and it doesn't matter to them if they are in Hamilton, Marion, Vanderburgh, or in South Bend, Mishawaka. And so how can we really look at who's next door to us and say, this makes sense? I have this piece of the puzzle, you have that piece. We can extend their stay and marry these two together.
Yeah, the White River Vision Plan is probably the best example of that, don't you think, Carrie?
Right, it is a good plan.
Yeah, I think that what we're finding is the ability to work together strengthens the state. But I think that if you go back and you understand that there are unique characteristics of the communities in the state. There are the large cities, there are certainly the suburban communities, there are the urban identities within those cities, and then there are the rural experiences. Those are all very valid and important parts of our community. And I think we're better understanding how that works together. And the White River Plan, the regional plan, has been this opportunity where you take something that is the state's resource and is owned collectively by how it flows through each community, and the ability to use something that everyone wants to steward and then bring that together is really affording us a chance to work together in unprecedented ways.
What I think is interesting too, in terms of when you talk about tourism, it is an industry that really does connect with economic development, with workforce development, talent attraction, those types of things. Is that an increasing focus in the tourism world?
Well, in fact, we have a contract with our economic development department to try to do workforce attraction because we are really good attractors. I mean, like you've said, we know how to aggregate things and pull them together, and we know how to get out there and talk to people. But it's really more about place. I mean, people want to go live in, and like 70% of all people who tend to move have moved because they've been there. And so really it's about placemaking and making great places to live, visit, work, all of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from a workforce standpoint, there's a part that's misunderstood about tourism in terms of when you bring that economic transaction, we're an export business, that you have to come to us in order to consume it. So we are naturally bringing people into the community, and you can't export those jobs. And so the other part of the opportunity is when we talk about the need to attract talent, we also have part of our population that also needs to understand and begin to have the opportunities to move up the economic ladder themselves. And so we talk often about the ABC, a job, better job, career, that tourism affords in terms of if you've got the attitude, our players, our resources, our suppliers, our companies will work with you to create the skill sets and move you as fast as you possibly can. Oftentimes that gets framed in a different light, but what it is, it's an on-ramp for another part of our community that sometimes gets left behind in these economic highs.
And Brenda, you had a statistic. What was it, 70%?
70%. And in fact, we just did a research study in 3 target areas for this project, and 50% have been to Hamilton County and Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And it was an extraordinary number
And that 70% of
of people who visit, who decide to move someplace, decide to move there because they have visited
been there. And Matt, as we were talking, the National FFA being in Indianapolis and that massive convention, and all the young talent that comes in and is exposed to Indianapolis and central Indiana on a regular basis, that connects.
Absolutely.
To workforce.
And I think tourism is in economic development in the traditional senses are learning how to leverage that for a better outcome. For example, if you take a look at the fact that the leader of every agricultural company in the United States is coming to Indianapolis every year in doses of 70,000 people at a time, for us to only look at that as a monetary transaction of the convention stay and not connect that to Beckseed and the advancement and the innovation of our companies would be a miss on our part. And I think what we're finding is an unprecedented opportunity to leverage that better.
From a statewide standpoint, Carrie, what are you seeing around Indiana? When you look at economic development, there's a gap between, in many cases, between what's happening in urban areas and what's happening in rural areas.
Right.
Do you see rural areas beginning to really engage when it comes to tourism and seeing tourism as a way to maybe generate some economic development, some future?
Yeah, absolutely. We just had our conference a couple weeks ago for tourism entities across the state to come together and learn and about how they can really take what they have to the next level. And one of our speakers talked about, we don't have the opportunity in every community to create the next Disney, right? Or the next, but we have
Maybe don't want
artists.
to.
Yes, we have artists, we have downtowns. Can we activate those and how can we bring them to life for our visitor? And so they're seeing how they can take their resources they already have and just put life and energy behind them and really promote that.
And we had on the show earlier the Indiana Foodways Alliance, which
Yes.
started, I think, just along I-69.
It did.
And has grown, I think, now to 20.
Yeah, they have the Donut Trail, the Tenderloin
yeah.
Trail, and you think of how they've been able to take all of these existing rural experiences that are authentic, that really our visitor now we know wants some of these authentic experiences. They don't always want that curated. They want it to be able to come and experience it naturally.
As you look at tourism in Indiana, and there's been some who have been critical of the state not funding tourism to the level that folks in your business maybe would like to see.
Right.
There's also a bill at the Indiana State House now that would change the structure of tourism, creating something similar to the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, kind of a public-private partnership to run tourism. I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
I think Matt can speak more to this, but I just want to say this is the model that I exist under, and probably 50% of our destination managers exist under. It's that public-private relationship.
Yeah, and I think if you take a look at the evolution of economic development in these broad areas, is that if you really understand, if somebody is willing to move from their home residence, they're looking for that intersection of where I need to work. In other words, the place where I'm going to fulfill my greatest potential in work and where I want to live. And I think Quality Place is that intersection of both. And so to have a conversation about traditional economic development that only speaks to the need and not the place, and tourism that focuses on the place but not necessarily the long-term need, I think it's critically important that as we understand better how you align those is how we're going to advance the state. And that's really what the intent of the Lieutenant Governor's task force was, to say, if we were to do this better, without regard to how it's been done, but if we were to hit a reset button, how would that potentially be much more successful than it has historically been?
And I would like to add to that, Matt, I think what was really very thoughtful and insightful was that task force didn't just say this is what other states are doing. It said, no, it doesn't matter what other states are doing, what's going to be the best for Indiana to take us to the next level. And so they created what I think is going to be a real huge win for us.
Yeah, how chances for this bill at the State House seem to be moving along?
I'm bullish on it. I think, and it's not without precedent. I mean, we're following a model in terms of a quasi-public-private that economic development under the Daniels administration brought as an innovation in traditional economic development. And we are following the strength of that model, but also parallel aligning with them to leverage for greater growth.
Looking ahead, what's that next big thing? What's the trend as you look at what's going to be next for tourism? What's going to be important for tourism development in Indiana throughout the state?
Well, Carrie mentioned authenticity, and I think the state has always held true to that authentic root, and I think that that's going to be a real leverage point for us in the future. I recently read a study that showed that rural communities that have developed their tourism product, and especially in outdoor recreation, they are not not losing people to the urban areas. They are staying and they are becoming much more resilient because it's not only a great place to live, but there's work for them. So I think you're going to see more and more and more this intersection between economic development, placemaking, and workforce attraction, all of these things working together, and it's a very exciting time for tourism.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if you look traditionally and what a lot of people think of tourism, they think of their destination vacation that is going to Disney World or something else. And it's this either natural beauty or a manufactured beauty. And I think that the unique opportunity that we have is really to celebrate the authenticity of our communities, of our state, of our regions, and to lift that up. And you need to understand at the outset that tourism, as I mentioned earlier, is an export that has to be consumed locally. And so we do tourism for residential quality of place, not for visitors. But because tourism is an export, it requires a customer called a visitor to come here and consume, but it creates a better environment, a better place for those who call us home.
Great perspectives on the very important industry for the state of Indiana, tourism. Thanks for being here, Matt Carter, also Brenda Myers and Carrie Lambert. And we'll be right back after this.